And I'm back with more Tales of Rise. I'm here in the Orium Falls. So I gotta climb. I gotta climb. I also gotta fight a lot of dudes too.
Little help. One more. Not on my watch. It's a duel of the arm. All right, it's showtime. Photon blast. Going in.
Rising Falcon!
Here goes.
This one's mine!
Go get him.
Elusive Deity! Swallow Blade! Rising Wyvern!
Leave the enemy's arcs to me.
In a bind, no place here.
Nothing
gets by me.
Elusive Deity!
I can carve through armor.
Rising Falcon!
Far enough.
Tear!
Bullseye. Hit. Not on my watch.
Plenty left. Tiger blade.
Here's another.
Be still!
Igneous discharge.
More where that came from.
You attack without...
Because I can't afford to hesitate.
This should make for some good weapon crafting material. Crap. This injury hurts more than I thought. Shionne, sorry, but could you... Oh. Right.
Retreat if you know what's good for you.
Bullseye.
Take this! Rising
Light
Wyvern!
astral energy.
Rising
Chinese supernova. Dance in the wind.
Not today!
Air thrust.
Be still!
Wind astral energy. Gale force. Lightning raging cascade.
Make it rage.
Swallow Blade!
I'll stop your movement. And I'll stop your life. Resonate with the earth.
Dazzle!
Ready up.
Rising Falcon!
Hit. Go get him.
I can carve through armor. Resonate with the
Here
earth.
goes.
Stalagmite. Make it rage.
Kitara frozen.
Hammer.
Looks like we came out on top.
We just need to make sure we stay there.
Right. And without totally overdoing it.
Down first. This game isn't full of a lot of convoluted stuff. It's very linear, but
Can't get out of
Rising Falcon!
You're not in your dreams.
now that I'm thinking about it, this is actually a good way to do a dungeon rant. A lot of people don't like linearity in these games. I personally do.
That's my cue.
I don't like having to look for things. And that's a function of me just getting older.
Not today!
If you want to have exploration and stuff, that's fine. But condemning a game because it's not linear is more of a reflection on
We did it.
a person being an explorative type, like a Zelda game or whatever. This is not a Zelda game. Final Fantasy X is not a Zelda game. Final Fantasy 13 is not a Zelda game. Some games are not
No
designed
scratches
that
on my
way.
shield or my armor.
And yes, I understand that. We don't live in the same world where, okay, we had overworlds, we had dungeons, we had 50 million pets. Have you played Final Fantasy 1 recently? It was all dungeons. There was nothing special.
Hey, look
It
at
was
that
boring.
enemy.
I don't like games like that where it's just dungeons for the sake of dungeons. That's why I kind of prefer games like this where, yeah, there are dungeons and stuff that we've been doing, but they're easy to follow. Like, I know that there's a treasure now down this path. or a new vista or a new thing. And again, people are different, but when they talk about, okay, we don't like linearity because we're going down corridors, it's like, sure, but we were going down corridors in the original Final Fantasies and Dragon Quest games. Just because some of them were developed in a different way doesn't make them any different. This is no different from an old school Final Fantasy game in terms of design, because if I'm going down that path that I'm going down, I know there's a treasure. Side quests are not locked into, okay, going through the overworld and finding a new place. I get that. Or a Zelda game is like, okay, you can go in a different direction and do a different thing because you have... That's not how these games tend to be designed, unfortunately. A Zelda game tends to be, you've got a thing, but you can kind of go to this dungeon or to this dungeon and try this thing and do this thing. Not always, whenever.
What is this?
But JRPGs tend to be very flag-oriented, and you have to do things in a certain specific order. I mean, every game kind of has to be that way, otherwise it would be completely
Understood.
out of order.
Been so close to a waterfall like this before.
I bet
You know, every game,
you'll refresh
a lot of games follow an order.
You're welcome to try.
Just because this game has corridors doesn't make it a bad game. That's not its focus. A game like Final Fantasy X is not about trying to figure out new things and going new places. Its side quests are locked into certain areas and doing things. Not that Mihen High Road is 3 to 5 different long corridor stretches that lead to some treasures but don't. Sure, the idea is, well, where's our explorative nature? Again, that's different people wanting different things out of different games. If it were me, I want a game that's trying to tell me a story. I don't need to be given 50 million types of things to do, like a Yakuza game. Cool. It's nice that I can go off and do side quests and stuff if I want that sort of experience. If you don't want a certain game experience, you don't have to dock a certain game because that's not the experience you want. That's different from saying, this game's battle system is not what I wanted. But, again, you're still locked into a battle system. I understand that frustration, but, again, that comes into a game is only a game the way that game is designed. Trying to ascribe a game's belief system the way you wanted it to believe. I think it came into view for me when I tried to review Shadow's House and how it wasn't the sort of show that I personally wanted and believed. And but at the same time, there are times where I have to say, okay, it's not the game that I wanted or the show that I wanted, and oh no, I hate it because of this. There's a difference between hating how a game is designed and how it's presented, and then believing that that's a terrible design choice because that's the way they were designing it. Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's not Final Fantasy X. I wish it was Final Fantasy X. I wish every fucking game was Final Fantasy X. But that's why Final Fantasy X exists. Because that's exactly the kind of game I want. This is Tales of Arise. Final Fantasy XIII is Final Fantasy XIII. So, I'm not trying to look for the same gaming experience from this game that I am a Zelda game. If I wanted an explorative game, or if I wanted to say a crafting sim, or for whatever, you know, I would play those games, right? There comes a good balance, I think. There's a balancing act that you have to do of wanting a certain style of game versus accepting that this is that style of game that maybe isn't what you were looking for, but has enough of the elements that it's still a good process and a good game. So, like I said, Final Fantasy 1 is still a good game, even though it's not designed perfectly to be my type of experience. But for other people, a pure dungeon crawl with maybe 10% of plot, because it was made in 1987, is just enough. For me, having played stuff like this, or Persona, or Yakuza, or Dragon Quest, I kind of need the character moments. I need the stuff is happening to them. I don't want the battles to just be battles, you know? That's why stuff like Final Fantasy 4 through 10 is so good to me, because stuff is happening to the characters that the battles are reinforcing. If I wanted a dungeon crawl experience, I would play Soul Hackers 2, and thankfully Soul Hackers 2 has enough character moments to balance out the dungeon stuff. But if you played Persona 1 or Persona 2, not really. If you wanted to play Strange Journey or SMT5, sure, they're different experiences, doing different things. I still like them as experiences, but I don't sit there and go, okay, I'm not exploring as much. And to be fair, SMT5 is all about exploring the wasteland and finding new demons and potentially finding, you know, this game is not. Final Fantasy VII R is not. They're about retelling a story of Final Fantasy VII in a different way. And is it perfect? No. But I think it's still a viable game in most of the situations. So, I think linearity as a concept can still work. Really, where it comes down to is, does enough of the rest of the game work well that it balances out the criticism that it's too linear? In 10's case, it certainly does, because the gameplay is still some of the best and snappiest I've ever played. It's very intuitive. Everything is told to you. Nothing is left to chance. That's important when you're telling a story and character-driven game, that nothing is left to chance. This game is kind of similar in that sense. They explain a lot to you in the skits, even if it's not like plot relevant. It's still character moments and character building that Tales can kind of provide in most cases, because they're not going to spend 50 million hours in one cutscene.
So I still had room to grow.
So you do have to have a balance. This game is not trying to be go here, do whatever you want in whatever order you want, because that's not that type of game. I don't think JRPGs as a concept work best in that sort of regard. Action-adventure type things work best. You know, if you want a pure sandboxy, go here, do a thing at your leisure, that's what GTA is for, that's what Zelda's for, that's what Minecraft is for. You can have elements of those, but that's what different genres are for, right? I also believe. I think when you start, my main criticism is when you start trying to be everything and not being one thing. That's where you start making mistakes. You can take elements from a thing, but you still have to have a defined, aura, presentation, character. Tales was... This game was started, and then they said it wasn't a Tales game? Like, really, dude? You tried to make this game a not Tales game. I mean, that probably sounded like a cool idea, but in practice, the people making a Tales franchise not making a Tales game sounds kind of strange. Ow, ow. Because why? Why would the developer of a game franchise as big as Tales not want to make more Tales games?
Thanks so much.
So
Thorough, a little kindness, huh?
maybe early, right? And I get that. It's like saying to Metallica, okay, I'm going to do side projects. Some bands like to do side projects. Some bands like to just keep doing the same thing they're always doing and make everything Metallica, whether Lulu be damned or not, right? Whether that benefits them or not, it's all under the same banner. I tend to think if you're going to make side projects, you want to make side projects. That's great. But once you've set yourself to making a certain game, unless you have it in your mind that you're making it as a side project, there are certain expectations you have to have.
On me? Well, I'll do my...
So, whatever a game has been, or will be, you still have to kind of
my best.
be beholden to what you are. I'm not saying you can't experiment. What I'm saying is once you start experimenting, you should start experimenting under the guise of a different franchise or a spin-off. I have no problem if Dragon Quest wants to be a Minecraft game. That's what Dragon Quest builders are.
For a moment, one Ganath
But as soon as you
Haros
start saying it's Dragon Quest 12 or Dragon Quest 13 or Trails of whatever, you know, outside of the mechanics and how you're going to build the system, you're gonna be what kind of game you're gonna be, right? You're kind of stuck. So it's kind of funny that this game potentially started out as a not Tales game.
We got some good equipment.
But at the same time, I'm not going to put this under the same... I'm going to compare this
I
to
can't say its appearance is to
another
my tastes
Tales game.
personally.
Mostly
farther?
Berseria.
I don't think we're even halfway there yet.
Ugh, man. Wow, that's annoying. Not even halfway. Fuck.
Hang in there.
Not even halfway? Are you serious?
So again, I think trying to ascribe something
If I do,
that doesn't exist to something that does
Not today.
is kind of weird. It's one thing to compare sure, is it fair to compare a Final Fantasy 1 to a Final Fantasy 7R? No. They were made 30 years apart. In some cases, 35 years.
I'm sorry. Having trouble keeping up?
Quality of life experiences are one thing, but they still feel like a Final Fantasy game. But a Final Fantasy game should not be a Tales game, and a Tales game should not be a Persona game, and a Yakuza game should not be a Zelda game. Ys should be an Ys game. And that really comes down to the feel of the battle system. You can change the battles every game if you want, but if it doesn't share enough similarities with what Ys is, if it doesn't have the ephemera, then it just becomes Final Fantasy is the game with the chocobos in it.
Together, there is nothing that
Right.
can stop us. Indeed, as one we are unrivaled.
And that is our greatest
Which is
strength.
why, despite changing, there should still be some familiarity between the systems. I think that people forget that Final Fantasy is still the same type of game in most cases, whether they're linear or not linear. Because let's face it, when you're in a dungeon, it's a linear game. It's gonna be a linear experience. Maybe you don't have the
Judging by the
overworld thing
stench,
anymore, but
I'd
still.
say the animals at the ranch are all grown now.
Oh. Well, that ends my dungeon rant. Because guess what I'm doing next episode? Fucking hell. Well. again, I'm not trying to dissuade somebody. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate in a way. Man, I'm getting the new weapons really fucking quick. I don't think I've changed that.
I'm impressed how well balanced this thing is.
Alright. Well, there we go with that. So you know what that means. We're fighting a boss next episode. Oh no! Okay, yeah, so save here. Oh. Alright. So we'll do that next episode. Thanks for watching!